You have 6 minutes, sir.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, and thank you to our guest. I'm very glad to have an opportunity to speak with the Premier of Saskatchewan today, even though I still don't really understand how it turned out that he's appearing before this committee when we're supposed to be turning our attention to other issues, i.e. the estimates. But given that he is here, I'll take this opportunity. Premier Moe, you'll agree with me that climate change is having increasing impacts on communities, many of your communities in Saskatchewan, that over the recent years have experienced substantial forest fires. There's an increasing number over time. It has an impact on public health and on the evacuees that have had to leave their homes. In 2023, your province had thousands of forest fires, which is far above the 150 average. And the surface area that was affected was 10 times bigger than what would normally occur. And the skies were smoke-filled for days on end, and folks had difficulty breathing. Now, Canada is a laggard on the world stage when it comes to our greenhouse gas emissions. Canada did sign the Paris Accord, and I imagine you are aware of the objectives under the Paris Accord. Now, how is it that we shouldn't make the big polluters pay, those that have a real bearing on our climate change? What's your game plan to deal with those big emitters, please?
Well, I would first of all say the average forest fires in Saskatchewan is 300, not 100 or 150. And we had 450 last year, and we experienced some rain that helped us out immensely. Alberta and northwestern British Columbia had a much more challenging year. Yes, climate change does impact weather, which we're experiencing, I think, in fairness, all across the nation and around the world are experiencing to some degree. The Paris Accord, I'm very familiar with the Paris Accord, and in that accord, there are a number of opportunities, I think, for us to provide a platform. Let me back up. I don't agree that Canada is a climate laggard, and I certainly don't agree that Saskatchewan is a climate laggard. I think Saskatchewan and Canada are leaders when it comes to developing industries that are reducing emissions with innovation and then sharing those around the world. And again, I said through the Paris Accord, there was Article 6, the internationally traded mitigation outcomes option, of which I would hope that this, and I would encourage this federal government to act on and to work collaboratively, for example, with the Saskatchewan agriculture industry. We're selling air drills all around the world. We'd love to be able to recapture some of those carbon credits back to our Canada and back to our nation and to our province, and ultimately to our agricultural industry and our innovators in that industry that are building some of the latest and greatest technology that are sequestering carbon in our soils, ultimately making Saskatchewan agriculture one of the most sustainable producers of food in the world, and marginally very, very close to being net zero today when you compile that with precision agriculture, when you compile that with the Tier 4 engines that Saskatchewan agriculture producers are paying for and utilizing in every piece of equipment they have. So Canada is not a climate laggard. Canada is an innovation leader when it comes to providing innovation to reduce emissions, whether it be from Saskatchewan's perspective, the ag industry, the potash industry, the uranium industry for clean nuclear power, or the oil industry. And so I think we need to look at this.
Premier, I'm sorry. I know that you like to speak. I know you like talking, Premier, but you haven't answered my question. Now, if you look at the figures, Premier, Canada is the second biggest greenhouse gas emitter. It's not me saying this. This is a UN report that has stated this. In 2016 and 2020, on average, we emitted 16 tonnes per inhabitant of greenhouse gas emissions. That's 4 times bigger than the global average. And we are a far cry from meeting the UN's climate objectives. How are you going to make the big polluters pay for what they are responsible for in terms of climate change? You circumvented the question, you waved your magic wand, and you think that with giant vacuum cleaners you're going to be able to sequester greenhouse gas emissions. But what about the people you represent? How are you going to protect them from climate change?
With all due respect, you're bouncing back between gross numbers of carbon emitted and then a per capita measurement, and you're not able to do that with any credibility with the question. The goal is not for the Paris, is for the big climate polluters to pay. The goal is for them to reduce their emissions because they are employing people in your community and my community, with all due respect. Per capita emissions is the wrong metric to use, and I would encourage everyone at this committee and across government to not be using that metric. If you want to use that metric, Saskatchewan is the largest per capita exporter in Canada and one of the largest per capita exporters in the world. And so what we are producing, yes, it is emitting global emissions, but we are providing that food, fuel, and fertilizer, the cleanest food and fuel and fertilizer, to over 150 countries around the world, and we are displacing. In the case of potash fertilizer, for example, it's 50% lower in its carbon emissions per ton produced. We are displacing fertilizer that is being produced by Russia and Belarus today by making more Saskatchewan fertilizer available. Credit to the federal government that invested in the latest fertilizer, the latest potash mine that is being developed here, a $20 billion investment by a global company. And so the goal is not for our employers to pay more. The goal is for them to emit less and to displace higher emitting, like competing industries around the world. That is how we build a strong Canadian economy. That is how we lower global emissions. And that's how we employ Canadians in your community and mine.
Thanks. That is our time.